So I think I was drawn to like the intimacy and connection that comes with acting. I think if I were to boil everything down, that's really what it was. It was a curiosity towards the connection that you get to have with people and all of these great, complicated experiences that you get to have while playing a character. And I think that that was something that was really interesting to me and intrigued me a lot, especially because I was so shy and introverted. But I think that, over time, it's just something that I learned to live with more. Like I'm able to manage my internal energy in a different way more than I did before, because I know that I'm introverted, and I know my internal clock that's like, this is how much time I will enjoy spending with someone or all of that. And so as an actor, it's been interesting to navigate that, but I've been finding my way.
Were you an extrovert as a kid? Were you like song and dance girl? No, you weren't.
Oh my gosh, no. No. So painfully shy. Yes. I mean, I'm very much so an introvert.
Yeah.
And so it's just that emotional energy, because I'm an introvert, but I love people and I love talking to them.
Right.
And so I want to connect with someone and look in their eyes, and then sometimes it just becomes a lot and it's overwhelming and you have to try to push through that. So I find myself with plenty of physical energy.
Yeah.
It's just the emotional energy that at times starts to dwindle. Yeah, everyone's been very nice. I think a lot of people have sort of just swooped in, and I think people can sense my vulnerable energy, perhaps.
Right.
My shyness pushed me towards wanting to break out of it.
One thing I haven't heard you talk about very much is you're not on social media at all. Tell me why.
Oh, I don't know. It's just not something that feels right for me. Yeah.
I think I've always just craved, I love and I love people, but I've always been so scared of them. I mean, when I was younger, it was hard for me to even make eye contact with someone. And
You're doing good.
Well, I was trying to get there. So I think as I've gotten older, I've just become more comfortable with myself. I feel like I'm in a place where I just really know who I am. And so I think that helps with shyness and things like that. And I was scared of that connection and would avoid eye contact even though I wanted it so badly. I wanted that, that feeling, that intimacy.
Some earplugs. I hate anything loud music. Even in restaurants, I'm like, can you turn the music down? I'm like a Karen in that way. So sometimes I'll put these on and then I'll just put headphones on top of it so that nobody can see the earplugs. Just push it in. And then the foam will just expand and see it all. It already feels better. This is probably second most important thing in my bag. It's my day planner. And then I always decorate it with stickers. And if I don't write down what I'm doing in my planner, I will not know what I'm doing the next day. It's definitely a necessity. So yeah, I was one of those weird horse girls that would gallop around the grass during lunchtime, and yeah, that was me. And eat grass, little pieces of the grass. I love animals and I love horses. I think they're one of the most incredible creatures. They're spectacular, and so I've always loved it, but I think just the way that I am, if I do something, I have to do it completely. I can't just do something for fun. I need to put all of myself into it. And so with horseback riding, it was every single day I was there all day long, multiple times a day, just trying to refine my practice in some ways. But it was also just where I felt most happy and comfortable was with the horses.
But eventually we're like, okay, we're gonna shoot it now. And every morning, for all those 3 days, I would be like, I wouldn't get enough sleep because when I don't get enough sleep, it makes me a little like rough around the edges, and I was sort of raw, and I was emotionally preparing, and then we wouldn't shoot it. And I'd be like, fuck. For whatever reason, it's easier to go to those emotional places within a character, you know, behind the guise of somebody else who's not me. So maybe it's easier to scream or cry or be in love or all of those things through a character.
Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a person communicates, interacts with others, and experiences the world. Autism is referred to as a spectrum disorder because it can affect people in different ways and to different degrees. Some people with autism benefit from significant support with their daily activities and social interactions. Others are independent and do well in many areas of life, but may struggle socially. The symptoms of autism can vary, but some common signs include difficulty with social interactions, limited eye contact, difficulty in nonverbal communication, and sensory sensitivities, such as when exposed to intense light or sounds. Some people with autism may have intense interests or specific narrow interests. Autism is typically diagnosed in early childhood, but some people may not receive a diagnosis until later in life. There is no single experience of autism.
More than 4 boys are diagnosed with autism for every girl, revealing a stark gender disparity in how the disorder is recognized in children. But the phenomenon of lost girls and girls hiding in plain sight suggests that a lot of autistic girls are actually overlooked, misdiagnosed, or diagnosed late. So why are girls less likely to receive an autism diagnosis than boys? Research points to a few key reasons. Autism is characterized by social communication deficits and restrictive repetitive behaviors, but it often gets overlooked in girls because the diagnostic model is shaped by how these symptoms present in boys. It doesn't always capture the quieter, less repetitive behaviors seen in many girls.
When these molecules combine and consume, they lead to drops in serotonin levels, which can cause depression, dying neurons, which can form severe headaches, and an increase of appetite.
But I like the taste.
Gender stereotypes can also play a role. Girls may show intense interest in things like horses or unicorns, but because those interests are typically associated with girls anyway, they may not be perceived as a symptom of autism.
Since the 1940s, autism research has been traditionally based on male cases, which severely limited society's general understanding of autism and how it alternatively affects females. Recent evidence and research into autism have shown that the typical traits showcased in female cases can be substantially different from male cases. As a result, girls and women with autism are often systemically undiagnosed and misunderstood when they don't fit the traditional criteria used to diagnose autism.
Today we're diving into something we really don't talk about enough: how autism uniquely shows up in women, and why it so often flies under the radar.
So could you have the female phenotype of autism?
You can't tell what others are feeling emotionally. Have you ever been accused of having no empathy? If you're autistic, you've probably heard this comment sometime in your life and found it strange. You really do care what others are feeling. Problem is, they don't actually tell you their emotional state. They just signal it with subtle facial expressions that seem like unreadable contortions to you.
Were you always, as a kid, perceptive of people? Like, were you attuned to their feelings and thinking about how they were and why they were doing what they were doing?
Yeah, I think so. But I also feel like there was definitely a disconnect.
How do you mean?
Because I could see and recognize, and I would try to interpret, facial expressions or behavior. But there was always a disconnect between
Like me really looking at someone, trying to interpret that, and then actually just like getting it immediately. Like if I'm looking at you right now and really trying to understand like what you're doing, what you're thinking, like that time has passed. Do you know what I mean? And like a new moment has come. Yeah.
You mimic the personalities of others. Girls and women with autism tend to have more effective strategies for camouflaging or masking their behavior. Girls and women might be better able to overcome a lack of social understanding by cloning the personality of someone more popular. Those who use this strategy report that they are always exhausted and have the constant feeling that they're imposters, with no real personality or identity. Do you feel like you have to strategically mimic someone else just to connect with others?
Autistic women are often able to engage in small talk, make eye contact, and have conversations that seem perfectly fine to other people. But after these social interactions, they feel completely drained. This is due to the emotional and mental energy required to mask their true selves.
I love being alone. I'm very much so an introvert. I need that time to recharge and like ground myself.
And yes, everyone can feel exhausted after a big social event. But for autistic people, it's often a deep sense of fatigue that lasts longer and comes with emotional overwhelm. Like they may feel like they've just performed for hours, putting on a mask to be what others expect them to be. It's not just the social interaction that drains them, it's that constant acting that has to go into it. For many women on the autism spectrum, emotions are not just felt, they're like experienced at a whole other level. Imagine like having a flood of feelings, intense, overwhelming, all-consuming feelings, and trying to keep it all together on the outside. It's like having a storm inside you while trying to pretend that the weather's perfectly sunny. The way women with autism process emotions often doesn't match the way others expect them to express those emotions. It's not that we're not feeling things. We're feeling them. But the way that we express those feelings might not fit with the typical socially acceptable expressions that we all know. You know, crying when you're upset, getting visibly angry when you're angry, showing that sadness when you're in fact sad.
I was like, I just feel numb. Why do I feel numb right now? I'm trying to shoot this scene. Like, first of all, I'm not a numb person. Like, I'm an overly emotional person. I cry all the time. Like, I welcome those emotions. And like, why do I feel this block between wanting those emotions? Because I feel it under the surface. Like, why aren't they coming out? And I realized, like, after filming that my emotions were kind of mirroring Annie's during filming. Annie is someone who doesn't want to let anyone see her crack. She's constantly covering, constantly holding things in, overcompensating. And it's only in those private moments that you get to see her like break that facade. And this was a private moment that we hadn't seen. I was always just trying to keep it in, not let anything out.
Replaying social interactions over and over. For every social encounter, autistic women might replay every single detail in their heads, thinking they said the wrong thing or that they offended someone. Now, this is due to a strong fear of rejection and a deep-seated need for social approval. And I know everyone overthinks conversations sometimes, but for women with autism, this replaying it's almost obsessive.
Yeah, it was an interesting scene to film, and it was one that months after we were done shooting, I would torture myself about, because when you think about something too much, you start to make up things in your head, you know? And I would think like, oh my God, should I text Sean and say like, suggest we reshoot it and bring Yura back from Russia?
Now, women with autism often struggle to say no to others, fearing that they'll be abandoned or that they won't belong if they don't just go along with what's expected. This is often learned from childhood where, we could have been conditioned to avoid conflict and perform to gain acceptance, to feel like we're part of the group, right? And people-pleasing can be a trait for many of us, but for those on the spectrum, it can be taken to an extreme. They might agree to things that they don't want to do because they fear being rejected if they don't. The key difference here is that this behavior comes from a deep-seated survival instinct, often rooted in trauma, rather than just being polite or kind.
It's a difficult lesson, like, to learn to say no. I think especially as a women, we're kind of taught to be people pleasers. And so, I mean, I don't know, at least that's been my experience. But yeah, no is definitely, it's a powerful phrase and one that women need to utilize.
Hyper-focus, or what I might call having special interests. This means that when we like something, I dive all the way into it. That's why I called it hyper-focus and also special interest, because we honestly can't think about or focus on anything else. And the fact that we can have these very specific special interests, and that's all we want to talk about, that's all we want to do. This could even mean that in school we don't complete the project that we have, not because we aren't able or don't understand it, but because we can't stop focusing on our research on dogs or something. There was an article I was reading by a woman who said that she had such an infatuation with wolves when she was younger that she failed some papers in this class because it was taken away from her time researching wolves.
So I grew up horseback riding. I was sitting on a horse before I could even really walk, and so that was my biggest love. Everything that I did was related to horseback riding and animals, and so I basically lived at the horse barn I rode at. And yeah, that was my life, and I even started homeschooling myself so that I could be at the barn more often.
Wow, okay.
We are sensory avoidant. Smells, sounds, lights, everything can be so overstimulating, overwhelming that we can find ourselves after being out in the world doing, let's say we had to go to the grocery store, for doing that for an hour, we have to come home and kind of recharge. We're like, oh, that was a lot. And so we can find ourselves avoiding social situations or not wanting to go out and finally seeing that band live because, the crowds and the noise and all of that.
I get very, I guess maybe the word's overstimulated by sound and lots of things happening around me. So if I'm at a party or something and there's really loud music playing, it's really hard for me to have a conversation with someone. And so it's kind of like when I was in school, I couldn't focus on anything because the whole time the teacher's just shushing everyone. And I'm like, wait, what about the actual learning part of this? And so I ended up homeschooling myself.
Being called a loner, needing a lot of recovery time.
I don't know if I ever really found my tribe necessarily until fairly recently.
Really?
I think I've always just been more of a, what's the word I'm looking at? It sounds so weird to say more of a lone wolf type.
Yeah, I get it.
But yeah, I think so.
34% of women with autism have depression and 36% have anxiety.
I mean, that's just how anxiety works, at least for me. It's the anticipation's worse than actually going to do something or to talk to someone or to see your work.
How we process social information. A lot of autistic people actually do read social cues. We just read them on a delay. It's in the moment you're too busy processing the noise, the lights, the conversation, the emotional tone, the body language, and what someone just said. So the social meaning clicks into place after the conversation ends. I guess you can describe it like this. We don't always miss social cues, we just process them later once the noise clears.
The way that I process things, it takes me a long time to understand the magnitude of something or to really understand how I'm feeling. And sometimes someone's like, oh, how do you feel about this? How's that? How is this? And I'm like, fine. I don't know yet. I need to think about it.
Did you feel comfortable at school?
No. I mean, I think maybe when I was really young, there were times in my life where I had a really good friend or just, I don't know, was in a different place in my life where I felt more comfortable. But I think when I got a little older, school was always difficult for me. Just the way that I learn is not the way that a public school system was able to teach me.
What was the way that you learned best?
I think just on my own time. I'm a very visual person, and I just need more time to digest information and really think about it and process it.
Girls with ASD tend to be viewed as just too much. meaning they're often too intense about a certain subject or too sensitive.
The person is generally considered to be highly sensitive.
Autistic girls are often highly sensitive. Sensitive, crybaby, drama queen, annoying. These were all words that I was called my whole life. There was not a day in school, I think, where I did not cry. A lot of things upset me that didn't upset other people.
I mean, I've always been very, very sensitive, like almost to a fault, I think. Yeah, I think things have just always like affected me very, very deeply, like to a point where it was just like even hard for me to just like go through life. Like someone on the street would like look at me wrong or give me a nasty look, and I would cry because it was like too much for me. Everything was too much, too overwhelming. The feeling was just like too big, for even little small situations. I mean, I had a friend a couple of years ago, like we kind of got into some argument, and during this like 2-hour-long conversation, she's like, "You're too sensitive. You're just too sensitive, and I feel like I have to walk on eggshells around you, and you're gonna have to work on that." And I was like, like my sensitivity is one of the things that I like appreciate about myself and that I like about myself. I actually felt I was gonna throw up during this scene because I hate confrontation with other women. And it was just like the idea of fighting with Lindsay, and we were throwing insults at each other that were improvised, was like absolutely nauseating to me. Yeah. Maybe it's like it's difficult for people to deal with sometimes, but I'd rather be overly sensitive and feel things deeply than not.
My shyness pushed me towards wanting to break out of it. I didn't want to be shy. I was a big daydreamer as a kid, and I still am. But I would daydream about being like different versions of myself where I wasn't shy, or I had lots of friends, or I did interesting, like crazy things, or felt big emotions. And so I do think that me being an actor, I'm able to do those things, or it gave me the opportunity or the feeling of not being shy.
I think many of the heroes in life and the greatest scientists and artists actually have Asperger's syndrome. Vincent van Gogh and Andy Warhol had many of those characteristics. Another component is if you are imitating others and copying them, you do literally win Oscars, and that's where we think Laurence Olivier and Peter Sellers had many Asperger features.
And the Oscar goes to Mikey Madison.
She played the awkward girl who hid behind the glasses in the blockbuster Steel Magnolias. But this morning, Daryl Hannah reveals that shyness on screen wasn't all an act. In People magazine hitting newsstands today, the actress says as a child, doctors diagnosed her with autism. And because of the disorder, she has suffered from debilitating shyness most of her life. She tells the magazine, "I've never been comfortable being the center of attention. It's always freaked me out." Hannah says even as her career took off, she couldn't bring herself to do talk shows or attend movie premieres, saying, "Not because I was above it, but because I was terrified."
Acting is not a surprise career move for an individual with autism. The predictability that an acting environment will bring is highly desirable for an individual who's on the autism spectrum.
She tells People magazine, "I wasted so much time scared, self-conscious, and insecure." She may have spent a career in hiding, but not anymore.
Welcome back. Tallulah Willis has grown up in the spotlight as the youngest daughter of Bruce Willis and Demi Moore.
Well, now the entrepreneur and artist is using her voice to raise awareness after she was diagnosed at the age of 29 with autism.
I was misdiagnosed for many years, so only at 29 got my diagnosis, which is very common, specifically for adult women.
Yeah. Up to 80% of autism cases among girls and women may be missed because these groups can internalize and keep secret their symptoms.
Autistic girls and women, non-binary, and trans people are left behind when it comes to autism identification and support. So there are far too many undiagnosed girls and women who are struggling.
Many girls with milder symptoms are missed entirely, and the research also showed that an increasing number of women don't get a diagnosis until well into adulthood.
I was so good at hiding the fact that it took nearly 3.5 decades to uncover the fact that I have autism.
I was 19 years old, and I had never considered that I might have autism.
I'm 20 years old, and I'm autistic.
I am 25. Recently, I was diagnosed with autism.
I'm 25 years old, and I was recently diagnosed with autism as an adult.
I was diagnosed with autism at age 31.
As a late diagnosed autistic, I was diagnosed at 35.
I am 33 years old, and a couple of weeks ago, I was diagnosed with autism.
I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was 20 years old. So that is 20 years of walking around this earth not knowing I was autistic.
I was given the answer to all of these questions all at once. I was diagnosed with both autism and ADHD at the age of 24. And I am not alone in my late realization of being autistic. Studies have suggested that only 1 in 20 autistic women are diagnosed in childhood. So that's only 1 in 20 that grow up with any awareness that they are actually disabled. That's only 1 in 20 who have any hope of getting the support that they so desperately need and deserve. That's only 1 in 20 who have the knowledge and understanding about how their brain works to be able to both be themselves and look after themselves.
Research also finds that females with ASD, since they tend to take things literally and are direct, that they can more easily fall victim to sexual exploitation, such as assault or getting stuck in an abusive relationship. They say this especially for females because, just as we discussed earlier, we strive for connection, and we're aware that we can struggle to make friends and build relationships. So we may choose to be with someone just because they show us a little attention, even if that attention isn't kind or loving.
My first kiss. I remember it so clearly because it was so embarrassing, and I wanted to have my first kiss so badly.
Any particular lessons? I mean, gosh, I don't know. When I was a teenager, I dated like a much older guy, and that entire experience just like changed so much in me.
And I want to sit with that final scene.
I remember I stepped out of the car and I was like, I'm just gonna talk to Sammy Kwan, and I was talking to her and I was crying and I was like, I can't cry. I was like, I just don't think the scene's gonna be good. Maybe I need to take something personal from my life and use it. And I do have this voicemail from my dad. He sent me years ago. I remember he sent it to me, I was on location like for the first time ever, had been away from home for the longest time I've ever been away. And I had, for a couple of years previously, just gone through some personal, like really difficult things. And he sent me a voicemail that was describing him driving to work. And I feel embarrassed all of a sudden. Driving to work, and like he sees this, he's saying how my dad's very like poetic man, sees the sun like rising from the clouds, and just how he thinks it's going to be a really I don't talk about exactly what, I don't think I've talked about what he says, but just that there's a lot of hopefulness that he sees in the future for me. And so I listened to it with Sean and Yura,